We're out here today with the 2022 Harley-Davidson FXR ST, or the Low Rider ST. This is a really exciting bike to see come from the motor company because it's the first time that we've seen them sort of throw back to that 80s era FXRT style fairing and the clamshell bags. This bike is obviously an evolution of the Low Rider S that we saw introduced in 2016, then translated over to the Softail model, but with the fairing and the bags, it adds a lot of functionality. So let's get into what this bike is, what's new, and what we've learned through our testing. At its core, this motorcycle is a 2022 Low Rider S. The chassis, everything is identical except for the front fork, which was given a single rate spring as opposed to the S's triple rate spring in order to accommodate the added weight of this frame mounted fairing in the front. In testing on the Low Rider S, I found that that fork had a little bit more dive than I'd prefer. On initial brake input, it would dive down. It was comfortable and soft, but I do much prefer the little bit stiffer, less dive feel of the fork on the ST. Suspension in the rear is identical to that on the S. It is preload adjustable with a little wrench under the seat, and that performed well. It does have a little bit increased travel and increased stroke compared to previous Low Rider S models, which increases ground clearance as well as lean angle, and makes this bike a lot of fun to rip through the canyons. Looking at the handlebars of this bike, it's very minimal. They're very stripped down. You have a gauge integrated into the risers, and then you have a lot of open space where you can see the fairing mount and how it bolts to the frame right there behind the fairing. When I asked the engineers at Harley-Davidson if the infotainment, touring screen would be an option for this bike, they said that it's not really the customer, that they don't think that that's who would want to buy this bike. And I disagree. I think the customer for this bike is someone that wants all those touring amenities and the luxuries and the comforts, just in a platform that's a little bit lighter with a little more lean angle and able to rip. So looking at this fairing, it's obviously a new design, but it's a throwback to the 80s Harley FXRT fairing. You have similar vents here, you have an LED light in the middle, and then the big vent here in the front. These vents are not closable. You do get, a nice protection. Harley has an aftermarket taller windscreen that you can buy if you want that. But I really wish that, like the touring models, you could hit a button and close that vent if you wanted to. When you're looking at previous Low Rider models and the way that Harley-Davidson translated the Dyna Low Rider onto the Softail platform, there were a few key aesthetic features that defined what a Low Rider was. You had 2-to-1 exhaust, you had tank-mounted gauges, and a lot of these things that defined the Low Rider are gone. They don't exist in this bike anymore. And so it's much more representative of the Low Rider S and that 2016 model and how it's sort of developed from that. Harley-Davidson said, it's not the Low Rider, it's more like the grandson of the Low Rider, where you can see the inspiration and you can see where it came from, but it's a different beast entirely. At the core of the Low Rider ST is the Milwaukee 8117. It's the largest engine currently available in any production Harley. It's the exact same engine that we tested in the Low Rider S with the exact same tune. We saw that bike produce 95 horsepower and 115 foot-pounds of torque on our dyno. The engine's easy to control and you've got all the power there when you want it, but it's not necessarily begging to be revved up. It's not like spurring you to go faster and get into the higher revs. It's just sort of readily available and right there when you want it, wherever you are, which is really nice. A lot of the time when you see aftermarket builders just overbore and build out their V-twin engines, you end up with a really abrupt initial fueling. That's a common thing with huge engines, but the motor company has a really good way of refining that initial fueling and making it precise and smooth so that you can have this huge engine, but it's friendly off the line, it's still controllable, it's still really linear power delivery and as smooth as you want it to be, but when you grab a handful, you've got plenty of power, it's got a lot to give. The thing sounds amazing, it's loud, it's throaty, it's deep. The 117 being the largest production engine from Harley-Davidson, you think this is gonna be a damn fast bike, and it is a powerful bike, it absolutely is. But this bike, the styling dictates how much performance is allowed. So it has to first fit the look, fit the style, and then second, be a hot rod bagger. Really enjoying the way that this bike looks informs the rest of the experience with it. And there's something about really just enjoying the appearance of your motorcycle that makes you enjoy it much more. Ergonomics on this bike, especially compared to a full touring bike, are tighter. You know, you've got the T-bars that are a little bit below my shoulder here, and then you've got mid-mounted foot controls, which for a lot of taller riders will complain that it sort of cramps them up. But I like the mid-mounted foot controls because you can put your weight on them. It allows the rider to sort of shift around, and it allows, you know, a little bit of body English. You can maneuver, get a little bit more agility that way than you can with forwards where you're sort of just locked into place. In 2016, the Low Rider S was the first time that we saw the motor company sort of take on West Coast club style and make a motorcycle in that fashion. We've seen that develop, and this bike is every bit an evolution of that. You know, we see the FXRT fairing integrated into West Coast club style bikes all over. So it's cool to see how the motor company is taking customer inspiration, the aftermarket, and integrating it into their new designs. So the saddlebags in the back are quick release. I've taken both of them off in just 20 seconds, which is really nice. They're the same bags that we saw introduced on the Sport Glide Softail a couple years ago. But with this, they're mounted as high as possible to sort of get that right look and make sure they don't affect lean angle in any way. Storage capacity on them is not as much as the touring bikes, but it's plenty adequate. I can fit my laptop in one and 18-pack in another, and what else do I need? Starting at $21,749, this bike has all of the functional qualities that we really fell in love with in the Low Rider S. It's absolutely just the ripper on the Softail platform, but that fairing and saddlebags just enhance functionality and allow you to spend more time on the road, go a little bit further. And also, it's just the styling, the throwback, they nailed it. It feels really authentic, it looks great, and that helps just with the enjoyment of riding and being on this motorcycle. All right, that is it for the 2022 Low Rider ST. Thank you for watching. If you like what we're doing, like, follow, subscribe. And if you want to read the full review, head over to cycleworld.com where we've got more pictures and all the specs.